compassion.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum, and welcome to Evening Talk with your host. My name is Lukman Skink. It's been an exact week since we last spoke. We certainly hope that you've had a fantastic Eid al Adha rather, and of course, Alhamdulillah, staying tuned to Salam Media. We had a fantastic Hajj broadcast. Al Haji Ponti and the team putting together a fantastic broadcast. I had FOMO sitting at home listening and watching all the social media posts, and of course, Alhamdulillah, bringing to you all the moments, the magical moments, and the life changing moments of Arafah, Muzdalifah, Mina. And of course, you heard from a plethora of Hujjaj from different parts of the world. I especially enjoyed the discussion with Muhammad Adam, the Iraqi Kurdistan Haji that walked from the United Kingdom to Saudi Arabia, 7,000 kilometers. What a journey of a lifetime! And of course, bringing memories of those olden days when people would go for Hajj. And of course, the Quran says, "Man istata'a ilayhi sabila," who is able to walk, who has the ability to go. And ability not only just means affording an airplane ticket, and in today's time, if you have the physical means to do it, then why not? Muhammad Adam has shown the world that it can still be done. And of course, Alhamdulillah, I'm sure you must have enjoyed the Hajj broadcast. Had an opportunity to go to the airport when the first Hujjaj were leaving, and as it would happen, I was not able to be with you during the week, during the days of Hajj. But of course, Alhamdulillah, my colleagues have been absolutely outstanding. Molana Muntaha Kenny, Sheikh Muntaha Kenny in Cape Town, and of course, Brother Inayat Wadiye in Johannesburg, Molana Yunus Kawanga as well coming through, and everybody else that was here. MashaAllah, we even had Sister Najma Kota. So we certainly hope that you enjoyed your Hajj broadcast. And of course, back to regular programming. It is the 13th of Dhul Hijjah, of course, inshallah. We continue on the program corresponding to the 12th of July 2022. It's just gone 9 minutes after 7 p.m. I want to let you know what you can look forward to on evening talk this evening, inshallah. Um, obviously we will continue um, our weekly discussion around the ANC and monitoring how the ANC, the African National Congress, is building up towards its conference. And I particularly look forward to this discussion with Professor Christopher Isike. He's from the University of Pretoria, professor of African politics and international relations. And we want to discuss with him how factionalism has impacted the ANC provincial conferences from 2007. And of course, we had the ANC conference in 2007. Political analysts will tell you that that was the first conference in which there was open contestation. All previous conferences or conferences before that, the contestation was kept to a bare minimum. People that put their name up for various positions were discouraged either from going forward with it, or from campaigning, or others told that, look, you know what, so and so has we are going to elect comrade so and so, and we wouldn't want contestation for this particular position. But things have changed, haven't they? Right now, it's a race to the finish, and there's a reason for all of that. It's all about um, what kind of jobs, or what kind of attitudes our politicians have towards government. Do they look at government as a job, as an opportunity for enrichment, self-enrichment, and or do they look at a job in government as an opportunity to serve the community, to serve the country, and to improve the lives of people in the country? And if it's the former, then of course we will have what we've had in the last few weeks and months, when the various provinces in the party are conducting their provincial elective conferences. We've seen that the policy discussions are being put on the back burner, and we want to find out why. Of course, today is our Palestine radio, focus on Palestine. Sami Horeini, local organizer from Masafar Yatta. Masafar Yatta, as you would know and remember from our discussions on the channel, is that piece of land in South Hebron in which the Israeli government is trying to institute a mass excavation or a max expulsion of at least 2,500 Palestinians. And we're going to be talking to Sami Horeini, and he's from a local youth group in Masafar Yatta called Youth of Samad. And he's going to be giving us, uh, you know, keeping us up to date as to what is going on the ground and what sort of efforts are underway to resist this mass expulsion. And we end up the program. We speak to Dr. Vusi Sibanda, chairperson of the African Diaspora Forum, and we want to find out what is likely to happen with the Zimbabwe exemption permits that expire in December. I don't have any such problems, but of course, um, there are at least 200,000 people, if not millions, of Zimbabweans who would be impacted by this, and many of them face mass deportation. And we want to find out from Vusi Sibanda exactly what's happening with the legal challenges to this particular decision by the cabinet in South Africa, and just get the latest updates with regards that. Of course, inshallah, the program this evening would not have our Islamic finance this evening. Many are still closed as a result of Eid, and we had a torrid time trying to get hold of them either today. So inshallah, we will continue with our Islamic finance discussions from next week, inshallah. Well, I hope that is okay with you. And without further ado, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we begin our first discussion right here on Evening Talk on Salam Media.
Breaking stereotypes, moving boundaries, joining hands. Salam Media. Humanity sets the agenda.
There's no smell that takes me back to the comfort of my childhood than the smell of black seed oil being applied by my nanny. Now I'm using Tib black seed in my own home to soothe sniffles and coughs, to help with digestion and immunity, and of course, as part of my beauty routine. After all these years, I've come to appreciate the wisdom in finding comfort and shifa in trusted treatments like Tib black seed. You can find Tib black seed at all leading pharmacies or find out more at blackseed.co.za.
Reliable access to clean water could save thousands of lives each day. With proper sanitation and easy access to fresh, clean water, communities can flourish. Our Thirst Relief Appeal provides clean water to communities in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East by building deep wells and providing sustainable water and hygiene solutions. A monthly donation of as little as 700 Rand could build a well for a community in need. That's only 23 Rand a day. Donate today. www.pennyappeal.org.za or call 031 11 00 573. Penny Appeal. Small change, big difference.
You know, it's a wonder how kids get anything done these days. With all the distractions, when do they even get time to study? As a mother, all I can really do is make sure they have all they need to perform at their best. That's why I choose to include Sunfoil, triple refined pure sunflower oil with every meal I make. Naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether I'm cooking, frying, or baking, I know every dish will be a wholesome one. Sunfoil, now we're cooking.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Welcome back to the program. And of course, inshallah, Aziz, we turn our attention towards the ANC. And of course, as you know, the ANC is holding its policy and electoral conferences this year. But in the build-up to that, each of the party's 9 provinces are holding provincial conferences to elect new leadership. However, most have not been able to hold important policy discussions because all the allocated time has been taken up by wrangling over accreditations and, of course, the actual election. In Gauteng, as you may have known, the party only held policy discussions a week after it held its provincial conference. And the question right now is the party, which is the ANC, not concerned about this tendency and this trend? And does it have what it takes to lead the country into the foreseeable future? Now, Professor of African Studies and International Politics at the University of Pretoria, that is Dr. Christopher Isike, he's a professor there. He has written about the 2 things that could kill the party. And he wrote about this in 2019. And those 2 things are corruption and factionalism. According to students of politics, factionalism is the reason why we are seeing what we are seeing now. We want to talk to him about how seriously are those 2 evils, and can the party overcome these. Professor Isike, Professor Christopher Isike joins me now, and inshallah, he'll be talking to us about these issues. Professor, good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us on Salam Media.
Good evening, Lukman, and thank you for having me in your show.
I am. It's an absolute honor. Thank you so much, Doctor. The issue that we're talking about here is not so much the fact that the ANC has postponed their policy discussions, but the fact that it is a powerful party. It dominated politics post 1994. At the last national election, we saw the party go down from 62% to 57.5%. In the previous election, they were at 65%. So it's a downward spiral. And my question to you, Prof, is what have you learned with regards dominated, parties that were once dominant that eventually became non-existent? I'm talking parties in Sweden, parties in across the continent. What are the normal trends?
Well, thank you. There have been many reasons for this failure. There are many studies shown that one of those reasons are a weak or fragmented opposition. We saw this in countries like Taiwan, in Korea, the Ivory Coast. If you come to Africa, Kenya and Ghana, as well as countries like even Zambia. That got ousted by, the majority party got ousted by the opposition party recently. Other reasons also include, the ones you mentioned earlier, such as corruption and factionalism. Those are key factors in the case of the ANC, like I referenced in the article I wrote in 2018, and then the one in the Conversation Africa in 2019, just after the Cyril Ramaphosa's elections. I was saying that the ANC fares very poorly when you look at all these indicators that the literature on dominant party decline tells us. So this is a problem for the ANC, especially the one of corruption and factionalism, which seem to be dictating some of these provincial elective conferences that you are talking about, that the dissension into chaos usually is about which faction and which slates would dominate and win those elective positions. So it's a jostle for position and about which of the factions within the party would dominate and take the provinces to the elective conference of the party in December. And these have tended to obviate the ANC from its goal of service delivery. Like you mentioned, not many of them have had policy discussion because the focus has always been on who gets into power. The question they are not addressing is power for what purpose? So exactly. It's a big ANC. Corruption is another big one. Factionalism we're talking about. Those are the two things I said. If they don't deal with, will eventually kill the party unless they kill both first.
Fantastic. Now, Dr. Christopher, I want to ask your opinion with regards, the ANC in particular. You mentioned the things that are, challenging the party's continued existence in governance, and you mentioned the fact that, all over the world, these, once dominant parties, they inevitably go into decline, and yet we see signs that these parties want to hold on to power. What is the likely outcome of when a party can see the writing on the wall, particularly nowadays with the load shedding and the cost of living, and there's a great and crime. There's a great amount of disillusionment with governance, with the government, and with the ANC in particular. What is likely to happen if they ignore those signs and continue to hold on to power like we've seen happening in Zimbabwe?
Yeah, the question is whether they really see the signs, or whether maybe they do see the signs but pretend that the signs are not there. Self-delusion,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Usually in all these countries we've studied on this phenomenon, the signs are usually ignored or are taken to mean the noise making of the opposition. Recently, in the continent, if you look at Nigeria, for example, there is a movement that is emerging, started from social media, but what you find is the ruling party and the main opposition party, the People's Democratic Party, and the ruling party, of course, is the All People's Congress, the APC.
APC,
Um,
yes.
they are writing off these movements of an impending of an emerging party known as the Labour Party as a social media party. But what they fail to connect, for example, in the case of Nigeria, is looking at how social media has become an instrument for political mobilization and playing an important role in electoral politics. And in the case of Nigeria, there's a link to be drawn between over 8 million people, young people that have registered to vote, for the first time since 1999, and the emergence of this particular candidate, which is something that the electoral body has not been able to get in over 6 months. But within a period of less than 6 weeks, you had over 8 million people getting registered, to vote, and that should be something to signal that there's potential change in the air. But of course, the elites tend to believe in their so-called structures and believe that somehow they'll get through, probably with rigging in mind. That was coming back to South Africa. The handwriting is there. There is an attempt, to try and get that back. In the case of Gauteng, for example, I know the new chairperson of the ANC in the province, Bayanza Listufi. I know he mentioned, and they did have some kind of policy conference after his election. So those are the attempts that they try to put in place to ensure that they get back to the real gist of the matter, which is the purpose of getting into power and using that power to advance the interests of the people. But
Mhm,
the real challenge for me, and I go back to Africa as a continent, is our failure as a continent to understand the purpose of the state and the essence of that state, as well as the governance notion that the purpose, generates. So, for example, most states in the continent were, established by the colonialists, and they were established not for the purpose of development; they were established for the purpose of facilitating the exploitation of our resources. And so that made the colonial state, to be parasitic in nature. Okay,
mhm,
and so once we've inherited this state, a parasitic state necessarily will produce a parasitic understanding of governance. Governance that is exploitative, governance that is oppressive, governance that is dismissive of its people, governance that doesn't work for the common good, because that is not the purpose of the state.
mm.
I don't know if you understand me. So this is
100%, yeah.
this is what has happened in the continent. So we do not understand what leadership, what governance is supposed to be about. Our understanding is that it is for ourselves, it is for our political parties, ourselves, our relations, our friends and families. And that's why we fight. That's why we assassinate each other. We are getting into this of political assassinations. Now we kill, because our understanding is that the purpose of the state is to exploit, is to oppress, and it produces a notion
Mm,
of governance, which is also parasitic, which is also oppressive. And so once you have it perverse, the purpose of the state is perverse, the governance notions it produces is perverse, then you have what you are seeing now, where people fight one another and kill one another for positions that ideally should serve as conduits for service to people. So if you see the position as that of service, the question you must ask yourself is, why should you even fight? Why should you even trade insult with anybody in the first place? Because you are coming there to serve. You are not coming there to steal. You are not coming there to to loot. You are not coming there to become more important. And you know, our rich people in Africa, when they get rich, they marry more wives. It's not an opportunity for you to marry more women. It's an opportunity to serve. And so when you understand it like that, if you present yourself and people don't want you, you go back and rest and carry on with what you're doing. But of course, because most of our politicians don't have jobs, politics is their livelihood. They have to kill and die for the position. That's why you see this scramble, and that's how to understand the failure to discuss policy, because it's not about positions, it's about themselves, and that's why they will keep fighting until they get dislodged, through some kind of electoral revolution where people simply vote them out.
Dr. Christopher, I want to ask your opinion with regards to the voters. What role do the voters have in ending this vicious cycle? Because we see it happening in our neighboring states. Well, I'm talking about in South Africa. We see it happening all over the continent. We see it happening everywhere. And yet, it seems that it's is it inevitable that it's going to affect all of us, including us here? What role does the electorate have in this case in South Africa in trying to stop it or in trying to change the narrative and into forcing our politicians to become or to do their jobs, to be our servants and to give us the deliver the services that are needed? For example, electricity in South Africa is a huge problem right now.
Well, yes, the electorate do have a role to play. It all depends on how educated or illiterate, politically educated, now, that electorate, is, right? And if you see that in Africa, because our leaders look out for themselves only, they have deliberately underfunded the education sector and impoverished their own people, so that they can become dependent on them, and then they can, they will become happy with feeding on the crumbs that these leaders, give back to them. This is not so much the case in South Africa, for example, where you have, world-class health facilities, but elsewhere in the continent, you can imagine where leaders contest for positions, be in office for 10, 15, 20 years, and are not able to use a world-class hospital to treat themselves, not now the people, to treat themselves. So their families and themselves go outside the continent for medical treatment and promote medical tourism, right? The same thing with education. There are no laws that say that ensure that leaders in the continent are forced to take their children to public schools. If these laws are there, for example, you find out that they will develop the public schools, they will develop the hospitals, because they know that is where they would go when they fall sick, right? But they don't do that. So what is the role of the electorate? The electorate have been largely uneducated politically, and also in terms of even the Western education that we've been offered in the continent since independence, so-called independence. Many of us are also illiterate. So we have been socialized into accepting the leadership of this failed group of people that parade themselves as leaders, right? But it is beginning to change with the help of social media. And this change started with the Arab Revolution in 2011, where you saw young people coming together using social media to mobilize in police states like Egypt, and ousting a Mubarak, who had been in office for more than almost 29 years, I think, at that time in 2011 when he removed. And that revolution also, got exported to Tunisia, and it was part of what contributed to Gaddafi's ouster and eventual death, right? And I'd said then in 2011 that I'd asked the question of what that digital revolution of our politics would mean for young people in South Africa and South African politics. And we're beginning to see some of these changes happening now in Nigeria. It will also happen eventually here in the country, but it will be something that will come when young people decide, that enough is enough. They are not from the system, and that politics should not really be about a race that you can have your own race there, and they would not deliver any service for you. So we will come to a time where we will share the struggle sentiment and begin to look at our life circumstances more objectively, and we'll begin to take decisions that
Right.
will serve us. And I think that it's that time is coming. It may not come in 2024 in this country, but it will eventually come, and we'll see pockets of changes, emerging. It's going to come either from the top down, or it's going to grow from the bottom up, but it will
Right.
happen eventually
Yeah.
through people and digital politics.
Okay, and what is your opinion, Doctor, about the ANC's, and this is my final question, the ANC's renewal strategy and the step aside, because we have the state capture report now that has been finally handed over to President Ramaphosa. It's final. He says that, look, only after the final state capture report is with us, then we're going to start taking action, and people are going to be asked to step aside and so on. Do you think, when you wrote what you wrote in 2019, that corruption is going to kill the ANC, do you think the ANC is going to be killed off by all those leaders stepping aside, and then there'll be nobody to elect come 2024, and they're going to lose by default? I mean, that's obviously the extreme, but what is your view about that?
Well, that was a possibility until the president got alleged of the Pala farm gate, if you like, right?
Right.
And that has affected his credibility, his the local standing, the moral local standing he had to prosecute this war on corruption. There are a lot of questions he needs to answer there. I personally believe that those monies are not state monies that he looted, but he has questions to answer around, why he had so much money, whether he was not breaking the law, whether he was supposed to be, as head of state, still be vested in a private business that produced so much money, and of course the issue of not reporting to the police, as well as torturing, if this is true, those who stole those monies. His complicity in this regard puts a lot of dents in his ability as president to prosecute the these commission reports, the report, right? So that for me has left many of us unsure of what will happen, because there are those that say that, look, we would rather have this tainted president than the alternative of his deputy president, for example, right? That argument is there, and it's actually strong, absurd as it is, but it's strong. So, but then, even if the president does stay in power, if he wins, if he goes ahead and gets elected, if he himself doesn't step aside, and he goes and he gets elected as president of the ANC in 2022 in December, I'm sure that he would win a general election. But how will he be able to convince people that he has the local standing, to be able to prosecute those prosecutions that should be from the Zondo Commission report? That is a problem. In terms of whether people do if the step aside policy does hold for any reason, because nothing is impossible with the ANC. If the step aside policy does hold and people step aside, like you said, I can assure you that there will be leaders, and maybe it will be an opportunity for the young within the party to rise up, take up the challenge, and present themselves for positions, and maybe through that we may be able to see change start coming from within the party. And I must say something also. Factionalism itself is bad, but you find that if people are focused on their purpose, for their reason for taking power, and they are clear in their vision, a faction that gets into power can dislodge and renew the party genuinely, without a tendency towards a graveside peace that tolerates the corruption in the sake of the unity of the party. So the big question that must be answered is, which is more important, the unity of a party or salvaging the state as a whole? This is a question that needs to be addressed, if by the ANC and the country as a whole, as we go into the elective conference in 2022 and general elections in 2024.
Fantastic, Doctor. You've definitely given us a lot of things to think about there, and of course, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you giving us of your time, and of course, we hope to speak to you soon. And obviously, we really look forward to hearing from you next time, inshallah.
Thank you very much for having me, and have a good one, Bookman.
I definitely will. That's Dr. Christopher Isike, and he is a lecturer at the University of Pretoria. And at the University of Pretoria, he is lecturing African politics and African politics and international relations. And he was giving us his take on the ANC. 2 years ago, he wrote that the ANC is a danger of just basically, going into the night, slowly into the night, if they don't kill corruption, if they don't kill factionalism. Right now, factionalism seems to have overtaken the party, and they're staring the Zondo Commission state capture report in the face. What happens is, does this mean that the entire ANC leadership is going to have to step aside come 2022? We'll see what happens by December. And of course, inshallah, that is the discussion that we continue to have right here every Tuesdays when we look at the political ramifications of the ANC's electoral conference here. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, it's Palestine Radio.